We're happy today to have Reverend Jason Bense with us from the Lutheran Church, and we appreciate him taking time to visit with us. Welcome.
Thank you.
Will you tell us a little bit about where you were born and raised and where you grew up and high school and some of those things that we might know more about you?
Yeah, I'm not a native Californian. I've only been in Sacramento for a year and a half now, serving as pastor of the Lutheran Church of Our Redeemer here in Sacramento. I'm a native Hoosier from Indiana, born and raised in Columbus, Indiana, well known for its architecture, and went to college there and studied, and my family is still back in the Hoosier state.
Your parents are still living, you have brothers and sisters?
One brother, yes, two nephews, and got to talk to them yesterday for Easter a little bit, and look forward to going back to visit in June. So.
Wonderful. Yeah. How long have you been in Sacramento?
Was ordained October of 2009, so right at 1 year, 6 months, a year and a half, now that I've been serving here in the Lutheran Church.
Now, what does it take to find a pulpit? Once you've gone to be educated and you're ordained, how do you find a pulpit?
Right. I'm serving in my first call out of seminary. And the assignment process in First Call in the Lutheran Church is determined through the Conference of Bishops. And so I was assigned a region of the country, and then regions assigned synods, and within synods, congregations, and then ultimately one congregation does a vote and calls me as their pastor. Hopefully God and the Holy Spirit are working through that process and the discernment of the people of God, where I'm to be called and serve, and trust that it's God's will that I'm called to Sacramento, California.
How old were you when you decided you wanted to pursue the clergy?
7th grade.
What unfolded there?
I was actually involved in a number of speech competitions through Optimist Oratorical and other things, and it was largely through that process, but also the encouragement of many people in the church, teachers, mentors, for me to consider the ministry at the time. But I really revered my own pastor, saw my pastor as a role model, valued their work, had a sense of mystery and awe about the church and the sacraments, and had a desire to understand more, to learn more. And I really reveled in the notion of public oratory, of being able to communicate with other people from a public position in that way. And so I began to pursue what it might mean to serve the church as a pastor, and felt that was my calling from a somewhat early age.
Then you were raised in a religious home?
Indeed, yes. My family is still very active in the church, serving in almost any capacity of the Lutheran Church that they could. We mowed the lawn as a child, planted flowers regularly, sweep the floors, took breaks from summer vacation to serve as a camp counselor or wash desk in the church, whatever task I could find, or our family found opportunities to serve the church, we would.
Service is a wonderful thing. Did you bring from Indiana to California your hobbies and those things that cause you to be able to relax and enjoy life, or have you picked up new things since you came to California?
I took a few with me. I love to run, and I still get opportunities to run. I've yet to sign up for CIM, the California International Marathon, but I have done lengthy runs before in other cities, including marathons. And I do enjoy running along the American and Sacramento rivers, and I find opportunities for that. My newest hobby to pick up while in Sacramento is golf. I've been to the driving range a couple of times, and practicing for some 9 holes and 18 holes, and slowly learning that as a new hobby. But yeah, Sacramento has a great amount to offer, and I enjoy exploring the museum here. My past work is somewhat in museums throughout college, and even in junior high school as a gallery attendant or preparator hanging artwork, and appreciate what the Crocker has to offer, and I enjoy using the gym and getting to meet other people in the different social activities of Sacramento.
Thank you. Let me mention about golf. I took up golf when I was 12. And a neighbor man took myself and his son, who was my best friend, to learn to play golf. And the first day or two he said to me, "Now remember, you'll never master this game, no matter how hard you try. And it's imperative that you remain religious, even though you're a golfer." So I pass that advice along a little bit, that we do that. Now, what's entailed with being ordained and becoming a minister besides receiving the approval to do that and moving somewhere?
Right. Well, of course, a major doctrine of Martin Luther and the Lutheran Church is the priesthood of all believers, and strongly believing from Luther's somewhat exaggerated teaching that anyone who's gone through the waters of holy baptism is already an ordained pope, priest, and bishop. He said that we became little Christ or Christians in our baptism, and so were called and fully commissioned in our baptism to proclaim the good news of Christ, to be ministers in the world by our baptism. The specific office of pastor or a calling to word and sacrament ministry is set aside for the sake of order in the church, so that the function of the church can be carried out, so that there is ministry that's effectively done on a regular basis, and that there's some oversight to the ministry. So there are fairly advanced steps in place for the sake of order and allowing for ministry to happen. We have a 4-year Master's of Divinity degree that's required after college. And with that, certification of the church through its candidacy committees, including clinical pastoral education, mostly in a hospital setting, field work, vicarage and internship assignments, and along the way, various encouragements or directions through the candidacy committees of the church. Part of that is psychological evaluations, a realization of one's gifts and abilities, recommendations of others in the church to really see where your calling is and understand how your gifts can best be utilized for the sake of the larger church. Word and Sacrament is one of those callings and is an ordained ministry for the sake of those sacraments to be rightly administered.
Now, I've been to a worship service that you conducted, and I was pleased to be there. And your congregation appears to be pleased to have you there. They look to be a little older congregation. Would that be correct, or not necessarily?
We have a variety of age range. We do have 7 confirmads, sort of in the teenage range there, and we range in age to folks in their 90s as well. We are located in the Carmichael area, which I understand is somewhat statistically grounded in being a more advanced elderly congregation of retired population. And I think in some ways we do reflect that demographic. We have a variety of ages. Definitely could be open more to the 20s and 30s age range, and that may be a priority for the larger mainline churches that's missing at this point, of how to reach that age gap of a younger population just out of college or forming their careers. It seems to be missing from the church, and would love to be able to find ways to connect with that generation.
Does it seem to you that fewer parents are taking their children to church?
We are not living in the heyday of the church of the 50s and 60s. It was a time when the culture supported the church and the church supported the culture. The church was at the center of the culture. And so to be a good citizen, you raised your children by ensuring they went to Sunday school regularly or attending worship. That is not the culture we live in, especially on the West Coast, and especially in 2011. Today, the church is on the outside of the culture. You're almost seen as odd or peculiar to be involved in the religion of the church in some fashion. I somewhat like being an outsider myself. I like to have that area to challenge the culture, but it definitely poses some challenges on how to maintain an institution that was at one time at the center of the culture. And I think part of that is a remaking of the institution, finding creative strategies and also flexibility for new ministry opportunities.
What does your congregation focus on, would you say, as far as a religious group?
Predominant focus of the congregation. We have been known in the community, and fairly our main vocal piece has been since 1988 a strong welcome to the gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender sexual minorities, and are known in the Lutheran Church for making advanced early steps to support sexual minorities in their ministry and life in the world. We also have major focus right now of doing social outreach and ministry. We have had multiple homeless outreach, made some kits to hand out, for, participated in the One Day to Prevent Homelessness in Sacramento. We have many partnerships that we share on our campus of the church with various ethnic minorities and various other language churches. We have a Korean congregation, Portuguese and Russian, and find some joint opportunities to coordinate and shared mission together as well. We utilize our space and feel an important part of our ministry of reaching out to various support groups, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Debtors Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous are all regulars on our campus of which we support. We also partner with the Mission Oaks Park Department to offer a preschool ministry, and also partner with our neighbors, the Mission Avenue School, and definitely support public education, and early education of children is a priority of many in the congregation. We're hoping ahead, we're looking at some visions of community gardening and partnering with other Lutherans in the area, of already pioneers in that. And this summer beginning a 6-week pilot program of English as a second language and connecting with a large refugee population that is in our area.
Now, I know that you're a chaplain at a hospital or hospitals, and you and I have talked in the past about giving service at the jails and those kinds of things. Can you address that a little further?
Yeah, I volunteer as a chaplain through the Sutter system. The training through that allowed me, from my seminary education, to be certified in clinical pastoral education with a unit in that, and feel like it's a privilege and honor of any and every hospital room I get to enter, to encounter someone and hear their story, begin to understand where they are. Just this morning, visiting with folks on the floor and realizing that we have a fairly vulnerable population in downtown Sacramento, transient, homeless population with a lot of chronic illnesses that are hard to treat when you don't have access to regular place to sleep and regular food or water to drink as much to take your medications. And I look forward to opportunities to connect with the jail as well, as we mentioned, for chaplaincy ministry there as well. What's
the biggest difference between ministering to your congregation and serving as a chaplain at a hospital or a jail?
Of course, there's a length of relationship that's built over time, and you get to know more and more people's stories when you see them beyond a one-time encounter. It's great to meet people in a chaplaincy setting, hear their story, but you're only getting a glimpse of their life. And the beauty of the life of the congregation is we experience people through many seasons of life, of both joy and sorrow, through spring and summer, and various life stages, and understanding a larger history of one's life story as well.
Do you plan on or anticipate being in Sacramento for a while?
I'm here as long as I'm called here, and Sacramento's growing on me, and I'm seeing many ministry opportunities here in Sacramento. I am always open to wherever God would lead me to be, but I could definitely see a full, lengthy career of ministry here in Sacramento and the opportunities for ministry for the long haul.
Do you see a need in Sacramento that just jumps out at you? Let's say as opposed to the town you grew up in or the county or area you grew up in.
The major cultural piece that I've noticed in Sacramento, as opposed to the Midwest where I'm from, is a variety of desperate groups that don't know one another or relate as well. It's what I value about the Interfaith Council of Greater Sacramento, is an opportunity to bring together people that wouldn't interact otherwise. I find these various minority communities, due to geographic settings or whatever the social pressure, not connecting with one another, or knowing one another's stories, or finding ways to engage in mission together. So a real ministry need that I see and try to work together is to reach out to other faiths, other religious communities, social groups, and social movements, so we begin to know one another and understand where we're each called to serve in Sacramento.
Now, there are other Lutheran congregations in Greater Sacramento
Absolutely.
than yours. What's the connection there, and do you know one another fairly well, work and serve together, and that kind of thing?
Absolutely. We're in shared ministry together. We meet monthly as a ministerium. I'm part of the Sierra Pacific Synod and the Sacramento Conference of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, and we share many joint mission opportunities and missional envisioning through our conference. And also finding some joint opportunities to share with the larger Lutheran community, even outside of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. Some other Lutheran churches as well I share in fellowship with. We're looking to brainstorm right now a joint Lutheran radio ministry beginning in June, of a opportunity to share the Lutheran faith and teachings with the Sacramento community in that capacity, and a joint shared endeavor with multiple Lutheran congregations.
Many faiths are doing that. That radio is good contact, particularly for people in town. Now, sometime here in the next couple of years, we mark the 500th anniversary of the Reformation. And that would be a big deal, I presume, with the Lutherans. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, and will there be a celebration and that sort of thing?
Half a millennium is a long time to live apart from the Roman Church, and we share many dialogues with the Roman Church. I would like to consider myself part of a reforming movement of the Evangelical Catholic Church, and feel that many reforms of the Reformation have been understood, and we are making great steps in that. You know, we've been come to a common agreement, and through the joint document on the Declaration of Justification, that we share as common agreements in the Roman Catholic Church that our justification is in Jesus Christ. And the beautiful aspect we all long for is a shared Eucharistic sacrament together, where we could show physical testament to this one Jesus that we share. And there's dialogues that happen, but those have to happen on many levels, both at the Vatican but also on the local level. And both are important. I'm sure we will commemorate the Reformation as it occurs, I think roughly in 7 years here or so at the 500th anniversary. I would hope it's a big celebration, so celebratory as the Eucharist of communion. There's some red flags that suggest that change in the church is slow, and sometimes a millennium is just a blink in the church's eye. But yet we make strides wherever we can, and we pray, like Jesus prayed, for the unity of the church.
Is there a central headquarters for the Lutheran Church, both internationally and in America?
The church-wide office of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America is located in Chicago, next to on Higgins Road, next to the O'Hare Airport. So it's a good central location for the country, and our presiding bishop has his office there. The international fellowship that we're a part of is called the Lutheran World Federation, and that's located with offices in Geneva, Switzerland. We have more of a decentralized church body per se than the Roman Catholic Church, you might suggest. Of course, believing strongly in the priesthood of all believers and placing much more authority and autonomy in individual parishes for decision making. So that trade-off of presidency and presiding bishop nature changes more frequently. But essentially, for the United States, we are centered in Chicago in many ways, and internationally in Geneva.
Does the presiding bishop serve out his life, or he's elected to a term?
Elected for a term, yeah.
Do you see a difference in your congregation and in the Lutheran Church? Is there a distinct difference between being religious and being spiritual?
I appreciate the question. I noticed on my bishop's old computer monitor sitting in his office, he had above the monitor handwritten a little note that said, religion is for those who believe in hell. Spirituality is for those who have been through hell. And we have many ways that we talk about religion versus spirituality in our culture and in our country. Largely from the Latin religio, religion is a notion of bringing the ligaments together in a body. Spirituality is the ruach, or the spirit, meaning breath coming through. And really, if you have a physical flesh that's devoid of any breath or spirit, it's pretty useless for work to be done. But also, I would contend, even though the spirit may be moving with a full breath, if you don't have a little bit of body and flesh to put onto that spirit's work, it's hard to love your enemy and to serve the poor, to be able to visit the sick and ill, just with breath alone. But we need both breath and body. So I really value those who have a deep spirituality, who have a lot of breath to give to our body. But we also sometimes need to put flesh and bone on our body and put that to work in an ordered fashion for our faith, for the life of the world.
Can we sort of safely say that spirituality might come easier if you are involved with religion?
Perhaps, but also religion and the institution, as we all know, once you get involved in an institution, can bog you down, take you down. And that's why we, as Lutherans, feel part of the Reforming Church, to be a part of a reforming movement, semper reforma, always reforming, always trusting the Spirit to come anew to us, like at Pentecost. And hoping that we don't get overcome by the institution.
How do you pick the topics that you're going to teach and preach about on any given Sunday?
Our teaching is somewhat largely set by the traditions of the church. We do use the liturgical calendar of the seasons of the church, from Advent, beginning a new year, into Christmas, eventually, as we just have gone through Lent and leading us to Easter, and soon now into the Pentecost season, and large batches of ordinary time, as we call it, as well. But the texts are pre-assigned each week for our church based on those seasons, and I do feel a sense of order to follow from those texts, but also reading the text of the Sacramento Bee, reading the text of our neighborhood, reading the text of the stories of the people's lives that I meet at the hospital or on the street, on the light rail station, and being able to read those texts of our lives into God's story, the story of creation, the story of the valley of dry bones, the story of Jesus' death and resurrection.
Easter just having passed, we were at North C Street, where there's a lot going on with the homeless, and they were passed out a nice little pocket-sized booklet that focused on the Gospel of John. And one of the ministers taught a nice group there assembled. Is there a part of the gospel that just rings your bell and that you just love to dwell on, or is it all one big umbrella?
The whole notion of the gospel being sheer gift, that it's nothing that we do to obtain, that is a primary doctrine of mine and the Lutheran Church, this notion that God's grace comes to us as free gift, of Jesus coming for the life of the world, despite us asking for that gift, and despite any of our works alone, that none of our activities or actions merit salvation, but it's purely Jesus' work. By grace alone, through faith, apart from works of the law, is this incredible aspect of the gospel that I find so encouraging.
Now, how did you come to the Interfaith Council? How did you find your way here into the same group that we serve together in?
As with many aspects of my life, I value the mentors and teachers through the church who have been here. A longtime predecessor of mine and who has served Sacramento so faithfully for decades is the Reverend Lloyd Hansen. Lloyd served multiple parishes here in Sacramento, is very dedicated to the Lutheran Church and to the Interfaith community of Sacramento. Longtime board mentor of the Interfaith Service Bureau, now the Interfaith Council of Greater Sacramento. Lloyd tapped me on the shoulder and said, Jason, you're new to Sacramento and you're called to this. And I said, okay. Thank you.
Now, speaking of Lloyd, they're getting ready to try to sell their meeting house in Oak Park because of a dwindling membership and other sorts of things. Will we come to that in our religions, or will we build and strengthen and grow?
I'll be honest, a lot of times I hope, as was preached in my ordination, somewhat for the death of the church, in that, as on that article you reference of First English, on Holy Saturday, the day that Jesus is in the tomb, that article appeared in the Sacramento Bee.
Very ironic.
That when we can start to die, maybe Jesus starts to come alive. And we get a lot hung up on ourselves and our human nature and our human institutions. And when we can ultimately come to a point of trust of turning that over to God, then God can come alive with resurrected life. And so I am very hopeful for the resurrected life of Jesus to come, and even when we're dead in sin, make us alive.
Are you happy in your work?
I honestly don't know how to explain my calling, other than it's incredible. I never know where life's going to lead me next, and it's a gift. I love it.
Well, we've been talking with Reverend Jason Bense of the Lutheran Church. We appreciate you being with us. Very insightful, and it's nice to have you here. Thank you.
Thanks for the questions, John.